to episode 6 of the UX on Minds podcast, and I'm delighted to get Candela Fonte on to the show today. She's a lead UX researcher and she specializes in research ops as well at All Human. She's got loads of experience, got a varied background as well, which she's been able to transfer those skills over to her current career and job, which I'm sure will be helpful for all of those who are listening, who are transitioning career. She has a lot of great advice and tips, which I'm looking forward to discussing with her today. We've been in touch for a while now on LinkedIn, and we crossed paths at a non-profit organization a while back now. So I know she's got tons of talent and skill, and really looking forward to this conversation. So sit back, enjoy, and let's go. Okay, so I'd like to welcome Candela to the show today, to this episode. I've known Candela for a while through LinkedIn, so I'm really happy to finally get to meet you in, let's say, virtually, not in person, but get to meet you here on the podcast. So I'll allow you the floor, so maybe you can tell kind of the listeners kind of your story, your experience, and how you got into UX research.
Sure. Well, thanks for inviting me. Well, hi everyone. My name is Candela. I'm actually from Argentina, but I've been living in Europe for about 4 to 5 years now. So I guess I transitioned to UX from marketing. So I have a bachelor's, so my degree is on marketing and advertising.
Okay.
So I guess I have always been kind of doing user research, but I just didn't know that it was called user research or even UX. So for me, it was like, finding out that there was an entire world, I guess, or even a name to that I have always liked was game changing. So, I suppose,
How did you, sorry to interrupt you, but how did you kind of come across and understand that it was user research or UX research? Because I had a similar experience doing another form of work that was user research, but at the time I didn't know that that's what it was and that it had a name. So just interested to know how that came about.
In my case so I remember at that time I had this kind of freelance project with my boyfriend. He's a digital marketer as well. Okay. So we were freelancing and we had this client and we were designing their website, just a landing page. But so it was more like, so we wanted to do kind of an A/B testing with 2 landing pages that we were between launching. So obviously kind of the tiebreaker was the option, the variable that's going to have more conversions. So I was just started Googling what's the name for this thing that we want to do. So test one website versus the other one and see which one will have the most conversions. So I just didn't know how to Google that. It's like it was hard to actually to explain and verbalize what this specific ask that we had. So I think I just came across with UX. I think it was more like zero thing at first, more like kind of A/B testing and then proving design concepts. And then I just started digging in and delving into this fantastic world of, I guess, just, evaluation and testing. And then that's when I realized that, it was actually called user research. And then with that came UX.
Oh, very nice, very nice. And how long ago was that? So you were obviously in marketing before. When did you kind of complete, let's say, the transition and kind of start your first UX specific research role?
It has to be more like around 2 years ago.
Okay.
But actually started in research a while back. So actually my first job experience was on an internship in the consumer research. It was more like the insights, consumer insights department on Colgate-Palmolive when I was still living in Argentina. So that was my first job experience. So I always knew, that's what I'm saying, I think I've been doing user research since forever. So that, because I always kind of knew that I liked that part of kind of understanding consumer needs and using that kind of psychology part of it. So rather than the kind of the design of the performance itself, more like, just more like the consumer side rather than the business side. So that's why I chose that as my first internship or my first job experience, because I was just so interested. And then I got my first research skills on that first experience as well. So yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. That's cool. So it's more of like a, I don't know, like a staggered like transition over.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. And so obviously you were doing marketing, and then you obviously got inspired by this testing and A/B testing that you were doing. What skills do you feel you have been able to apply from like your marketing experience into user research, maybe apart from like the testing side?
Yeah, I guess more like the lingo, to be honest. It was more like transitioning from digital marketing or any type of business studies is much easier than transitioning from maybe academia. But I know there's so many user researchers out there that are transitioning from that because you already know how to speak business, which actually that gives you, I guess, a kind of an advantage. Yeah, so I guess it was more like I knew exactly what I knew exactly what they were talking about. It's just learning another language that maybe, for instance, in marketing we will call user personas, buyer personas, and now I knew that they were actually called in UX. They are called user personas. So changing kind of that, I guess, the terminology and the language, depending on the people or the person I was talking to. So yeah, I guess that's kind of the main, the main skills that I were kind of useful when transitioning.
Yeah, which helps. Like you have a bit more experience or background in also how the team, kind of the company works with the teams and the interaction. Because obviously, as UX researchers, we also do need to include marketing or sales, and as stakeholders in decision making and stuff. So having that side of your background,
obviously, and also obviously kind of hard skills like analytics, and there's so many things that digital marketing and UX have in common. That's because it's on the digital world, so there are so many, I guess, like hard skills as well that kind of make the transition easier for me, I suppose, than other people.
That's cool. And so I imagine it wasn't as smooth sailing as you're making it sound. Maybe it was.
Not.
What were the challenges that you faced?
I guess maybe, there's a sort of rivalry between design and marketing. Like designers absolutely dislike marketers. I think it's mainly because of their drive. Like marketers are driven by conversions and performance and KPIs, whereas UX is driven by user satisfaction and experience overall. So that's, that essentially is it's a constant fight. So so I guess the first challenge was actually maybe designers, because if you're a UX researcher, the chances are that you're probably going to be working in the UX department. So I was working with designers, whereas in my previous jobs I was working in the marketing department. So I kind of changed sides.
Like a mental switch.
Exactly. So I guess at first was like maybe just setting people's expectations that I'm on their team and that's just trying to win them over, and then was like and then I just like got them, like I was trying to get what the like the designer side and their reasons of why they might do things differently than marketing. So I guess that was at first my first challenge, kind of in easing into the world of UX when transitioning from marketing. And then I suppose obviously managing stakeholders' expectations and just multiple stakeholders. Like when I was in marketing and I was freelancing, my only and solo stakeholder was the client, and maybe just one web designer that we would outsource. So that was about it. And now when I transitioned to UX, it was my first experience working on an agency as well. So I had not only the clients, but the department of designers, the department of marketing, and so on and so on and so on. So because it was like kind of multiple stakeholders and agile working as well, which I wasn't used to as well, like so many other things that comes with the UX world.
That can be daunting as well, because on the one hand, like, you do have the experience of being a marketer, so maybe like speaking to marketers or explaining like what you found or the feedback that you're getting and etc. Being on the other side, you kind of know like the talk and how to like convince a marketer. So on the one hand, probably you had like the benefit of coming from that background, but then also it can be daunting, like having to not sell your research, but convince the stakeholders to take on board the research that you're doing and help it have the impact that it should have on how the product goes, etc. And that can be quite scary, especially at the beginning of your career, that you've got all of these people and you have to talk to them in different ways as well, because obviously they've all got their own objectives, their own jargon, and their own ways to discuss and make decisions. So that can be difficult sometimes. So you have to be empathetic towards the user, but also to your internal colleagues as well and stakeholders. So yeah, do you have any advice for that as well, about how you kind of develop those skills?
Yeah, so I suppose for me, in my personal opinion, presentational skills are the most important skills that you can have. I'm a strong believer that the value of your work is as valuable as, let me word this better. So it's like your work will always be as valuable as your presentation of it is. That makes sense. So it's like if you're not good at showing off what you have worked on, then that's what people will get from it. So it's the perceived value that matters. So actually, one of the hard skills that I'm so thankful of having and grateful is actually just graphic design skills. So I never needed someone to do the presentation of my research for me. I can do a kick-ass presentation by myself, and I actually prefer. I don't like people, messing around with my presentation. It's just, yeah. So it's like, because, you've done your research, you know how you want to play this back, what are the highlights and so on. So it's actually, it's kind of your moment to shine as a researcher. So I don't like people messing around with that, to be honest. Yeah. So I suppose it's like, it's, as an advice, it's, well, I always, I guess it's as any presentation, just get to know your audience before you even start the research, if that's possible. So the sooner you know who you will be presenting the results to, or like, for instance, just one of the latest piece of research that I've done, we've been told that the research was going to be presented to some kind of the C-levels of our client business. So they were going to be very, figure quant minded. So we actually changed the entire research approach of instead of being, we made it quant. So instead of running interviews, we actually launched a survey, or we used most of our budget to run the survey, and then we just did a couple of interviews just to get some quotes to kind of sustain the quant data. But the big headlines were actually the quantitative, findings out of the research rather than the quotes. So that changed the entire approach. So by getting to know the audience of, your findings presentation at the very beginning, I think that's the best thing that you can do whenever it's possible. And then also, do just kind of a kick-ass presentation as well, because people eat through their eyes. So and I'm all like, that's also the part in which you can get creative and just use, if you work with designers, you might ask them to help you as well, just to create, maybe some visuals that, actually calls the attention and so on. I think that's one of the parts that I think I like the most about the research, to be honest. It's when I enjoy
where you can kind of show off what you found.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And also that's also a good point, because also not all UX researchers will have that kind of design flair. So it's also good as well to kind of use your UX team and ask designers like not have to always isolate yourself, especially if you're like, I don't know if you are a team of one, but if you are a team of one, not to kind of isolate yourself and maybe feel the pressure that, oh, I need to make this look pretty. I don't know how, but obviously like lean on your colleagues as well to
Definitely.
help you do that, because like you say, people lead
Yeah.
with their eyes. And when you want them to have, when you want your research to have the impact on the product, especially if you feel strongly about what you found as well, yeah, to make it like visually appealing, because
Yeah.
sometimes people have this, I don't know, like stigma towards research that it takes a long, well, this is what I found out anyway, it takes a long time and that it's boring and it's only about data.
Definitely it's
Um,
not.
exactly. It can be visually pleasing, it can be exciting as well, it can be
Yeah.
interactive. So I think encompassing all of that into your presentations can also make your job as well more pleasant, because it
Definitely.
can be a hard
And I
slog
think it's,
sometimes going through interviews and stuff.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's actually also it's your opportunity not only to show off what you've done, but also
Yeah.
to sell more research, like to
Yeah,
sell yourself.
absolutely.
So what I always do is I like my last slide of any research project that I do and deliver is actually more research, kind of
Yeah.
yeah, like just leave a slide for open questions that will lead to more research to come.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Like
I
a
always want to
cliffhanger.
leave that. Yeah, exactly. So it's more like, well, we still haven't found answers to all of these questions. So if you want to find those, then,
Yeah,
here's my
you know
number.
where to look. Exactly. That's it's a good one
Exactly.
actually, that one, because maybe you're focused on delivering results that can be kind of done now,
Yeah,
like go and do
exactly.
this, do that, change whatever.
And it's
But yeah, it's
cyclical,
just
it's never a linear process,
no,
product
absolutely.
design. So this should always, feed into more research and
Yeah,
more questions to be answered.
yeah, and also you're never gonna find out absolutely everything, even in the best research study ever. So it's also good to highlight that and show like we can be even better, we can find out even more.
Yeah,
If we focus on this, or we notice this, like we need to do deeper research in this area or this pain point to kind of back up maybe the small bit of feedback that we
exactly.
found, or however that goes. So no, it's also I will take this point as well in my presentations.
I'm glad it's helped.
Cool. How would you, because well, I know for sure some of our listeners are currently transitioning and are looking for their first UX research role. And a few have even asked me, like, obviously we're talking about presentations when you have a job and you're doing these presentations to various stakeholders or in meetings. How can you maybe translate those skills or translate that type of presentation into a portfolio presentation or a case study presentation in an interview? Do you have any advice or any personal experiences and tips that helps you?
Like, you mean how would I use my previous research work on
Yeah.
a portfolio, or how?
Yeah, because obviously, well, from my experience anyway, kind of the approach to the presentation is slightly different, because obviously in your job or with your clients, you're trying to convince them to use the research and to obviously using design decisions or product decisions or whatever that may be. Obviously, in an interview, you're trying to convince someone to hire you. So maybe the approach is slightly different, and maybe the focuses of what you focus on is different.
I suppose, to be honest, I think it's not because I think maybe it's because the way I do my research deliverables is pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
Like I design those pretty much the same way that I would design a portfolio. Which is basically, taking someone through what your initial approach has been. What is it that you want to define? What was your approach? Why have you decided on this approach? What you've done, what you found, and then just, what was the effect of that? So I think it's pretty much the same thing, to be honest. It's just taking them through what you've done, and why, just walk them through why you decided to go that way and not the other way, or what were the challenges that you had to face along the way. I think, to be honest, I would do the same thing that I do with my research deliverables of my day-to-day work. Like I will literally take them through what I've done and why I've done that.
No, that's cool, and also good to know as well, like because especially when I was like looking for my first role, that I thought it would be different when I did get my job, and that what I was doing, like all the preparation I was doing to find the job and case study and things like that it would be a whole lot different when I actually had the job. And what you say is true, that the skills that you're learning now in the transition period are going to be useful for also when you get a job. It's
Definitely.
not wasted effort. It's not
It never
something
is.
once you've done it, exactly. Then once you've done it, you're like, oh, okay, that's over. Now I can do the real work. But all the skills that you're doing now, that you're learning now, are going to be useful for the future. So that's also nice to hear as well from you.
Yeah.
I wanted to do now maybe a bit of like retrospective analysis on yourself. So is there something that you wish you had known before you became a UX researcher that now, or maybe like what I was saying before, that you feel that once you get the job, or you have maybe a vision in your head of how everything will be, and then we actually do become a UX researcher. It's like everything in life, it always seems different when you're actually doing it. So is there anything that you wish you had known before becoming a UX researcher?
I suppose maybe. Okay, so yeah, so I suppose it's maybe just don't try to reinvent the wheel every time and stick what people have
It's a good
done.
one.
Like, yeah, like often like when you start reading about when you're kind of I guess entering on a new position you have never worked in before, or a new industry like UX, when you're transitioning from somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's like you start getting so overwhelmed by so many new concepts and practices and ways of working and things that you should be doing. And then when you start putting that in practice, it's just you think that you have to do everything from scratch, like creating your own guide for interviews. I don't know, like just learn how to do a survey from scratch as well. I don't know, so many things that it could have saved me so much time if I would just stuck with the templates that are already there, that someone has already created for me, and probably had so much experience than I had when I started. So I think is use templates. I think that's my number one learning. If I could go back in time, I will stick with the templates that are there, and maybe don't read every article that's in the internet and listen to every course or every video. It's just so overwhelming, the amount of information that's out there. And just maybe stick with the big ones, with the old good ones like Nils and Norman Group, or I like the userinterviews.com blog as well. They have fantastic content and podcasts. And just stick with the ones that you liked and found useful, and just use their resources, and that's about it. Like don't not even like start Googling and downloading every template that you encounter with. It's just going to drive you crazy and you waste your time. So
no, that's true, because you do feel like especially your first job, that you have to prove yourself, and that you have to come up with these like amazing interview scripts, and you have to kind of show your skills and things like that, which obviously you do. But I like that point. Don't reinvent the wheel. If something's out there that works and that you like the style as well, obviously you will find your own style as well, and things that work for you.
Definitely.
As you grow into the role and as you get more experience, you'll find it's all you learn as you do. So as you do an interview and you think afterwards, that didn't go so well. I didn't really get the insights that I hoped I would have received.
Yeah, and I think this is a common one. Sorry, I think it's a common one actually, this one, because of the type of personalities that people, I think that often people have, user researchers often have, it's commonly, I think, because I don't know, the people that I get to know, they're organized people, like you like to plan your stuff and do it. So I think it's a common one to exactly overplan, and or maybe even something like even over just over controlling things. It's just don't.
No, it's true. I tend to go like really in depth in my research briefs and like all the planning. And I was actually speaking to one of my colleagues the other day, lead UX designer, and he said yeah, your plan was really in depth. Are you hoping to get to get all of that from the, and I
Oh
thought
gosh.
after, it's like, yeah, that's probably a bit a bit too in depth.
God, I
Probably
love
setting
planning. I
myself.
think I love more planning than I do actually doing the research.
Yeah, me too. Making it all look good. Um, but then, yeah, that's probably one thing that I've also found to be beneficial, that in interviews, yeah, don't over control them. Don't, because also you can also lean towards bias as well if you make it too controlled and the
Yeah,
user doesn't feel the ability to express themselves. Um, but yeah, also just go with the flow. And if the interview doesn't go exactly how you imagined it, then that's okay.
that's
Like
okay too.
it actually might give you even better feedback. So no, that's definitely a good piece of advice. Thanks for sharing. Anything else, like just thinking about, I don't know, people you know, I'm thinking about people I know that are transitioning over. Any kind of hot tips that you would give to someone who's trying, maybe they've been, I don't know, getting all those no's in the interviews and they've revamped their portfolio 20 times and
Mm,
they still can't get that first job. What tips would you give to someone in that position?
I think what I did that really worked for me is just, fake it till you make it. you know, uh,
Yeah,
yeah, that's a classic one as well. Like,
I'm
I
still
suppose
faking
it's,
it, so it
yeah, I'm
doesn't
still
end.
faking it. Everybody's faking it. Like,
Yeah.
and also kind of fight that imposter syndrome as well. Like,
Yeah.
I feel it's more like, understanding what are the things that, what are the skills from your previous work
Yeah.
that match with the job description that you're trying to
Yeah.
get. And then highlight that on your LinkedIn, on your CV, where you can, because that's how algorithm works as well. So
Yeah.
use those keywords everywhere you can, and it's not lying. Honestly, it's just
No, no.
rewording it so the skills that they're looking for are being highlighted
Yeah.
more than the ones that are less important for
Absolutely.
this work that you're chasing. So what I did is, when I found out that what I have always been doing was called user research, I just changed, I don't know, survey scripting or whatever, however I was calling it, for actually user research interviews.
Yeah.
So just use the keywords or the concepts of the UX field for change that from the ones that you've been using and in your previous work and industries. So it's just finding those things that are in common and use the terminology that is used on the UX world, I suppose. So for me, that's actually that's a great for me. I think that's a great advice that I learned in my experience, because you can even apply that to, as I was telling you, working with others as well, and different stakeholders from different backgrounds and expertise and departments. So just, maybe even have a note, write that somewhere, like people in marketing call this, and then people in UX call this, that. And then and depending who you're talking to, you can use one term over the other, and then use that on your LinkedIn and whatever to find a job as well. So I think that's speak the same language.
Yeah, that's a huge thing. That's also a skill that will help you also when you're a user researcher, UX researcher. When you're speaking to users, speaking their language helps in kind of developing that rapport, that empathy with the user. So it's also a skill that's not going to go to waste. But it's definitely something that helped me as well, because I've met many UX researchers, and many of them come from varying backgrounds and varying experiences. Like, obviously, a marketer, I've met all sorts, even like the most obscure backgrounds that you think, how are you now a UX researcher? But you'll find that all of them have skills that they're able to transfer over, and they just highlighted them on their CV, in their interviews. Like UX research, obviously there's maybe the psychology element of it, behavioral science, etc., which you can learn, you can study. But there's also a lot of UX research which involves a lot of skills that are used in a lot of other roles and positions. Definitely. So, like, I came from, it's a long story, but IT, then education, and then UX research. And a lot of things, especially in education and teaching, I was able to bring over, like, I don't know, just that human interaction and
Yeah,
understanding like a human
communicational
learning
skills as
process.
well.
Exactly. Empathizing with someone and their limitations, because it was teaching language. Maybe how to explain something in a way that they would understand. All of these things helps in interviews with users, in stakeholder
Definitely.
meetings, all of that. So just highlighting those, and yeah, it's a really good point you brought up. Just
Yeah,
making
I feel
sure
like,
that those are highlighted.
exactly, like skills, those are skills that you have, like not only in the job that you're working on, but in your life, wherever, the area or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's like you have that's something that you personally, as a person have, and you're just applying those to a work, to a job, but actually that's something of your own personality. So
Exactly.
you bring that to everything that you do, if you think about it, to your relationships, to to whatever. So it's like, that's something that you have earned with your years of experience, or in life. So it's just highlighting that on a job description or CV, and then realizing that you actually do that in every area of your life, I suppose. So,
Exactly.
I guess it's a very romantic way to say this, but that's what I think anyways.
No, it's true though. I suppose like when you're in that position, I remember it too. I remember hearing these things and thinking, yeah, that sounds like easier said than done. Like sounds like super easy. Yeah, just change this. But like on the one hand, it is almost as simple as that, in terms of just like changing your CV to include like not the buzzwords, but like the lingo of a UX researcher or a UX team, including those, just adjusting those like you did with like the surveys that you were doing before, just changing how you word that and kind of, I don't know, the type of data you were collecting, etc. It's not lying, it's just kind of making it more appealing, rewording, making it more appealing to a hiring manager. And just doing that it's not a guarantee to get you a job, but it will help you as well, because as you do that, you also learn the lingo and you'll know how to then speak during an interview. And then it's just a case of obviously there's many free resources out there to learn like a UX researcher process, the design process, where a UX researcher comes into that design process, then just learning that to a level that you can then like show in a case study or during an interview. And then all of the technical skills, let's call them, you'll learn on the job, and you'll learn.
Definitely. And I feel like that's also kind of, I guess, kind of a threat to the field as well, because hard skills are kind of easy to gain. Like anybody can take a course or learn from someone else to do user research. That's easy.
Like, and there's plenty of mentors out there.
There's plenty of mentors out there, and Coursera's courses are like €5 or whatever, and then just gain
I use Udemy
UX certificate. Exactly. So it's like that's easy. Anybody can gain that certificate and just call themselves user researchers. But actually, what will stand you out from the rest of the people, and I guess will actually bring your confidence to say, I'm a good user researcher, is that it's those soft skills, I suppose. And then and I guess just those things are not taught in a course, and that kind of sensitivity or of being able to read people, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but are those things that even with stakeholders or your peers or or users, it's just those that I guess I suppose soft skills that you might not even know that you have, but you do. So that's what will stand you out.
Exactly. And you'll find that probably you rely and you need those soft skills more than the hard skills, the actual UX researcher technical skills, let's say, because those are only an element of your job, and you'll need them in like choosing a methodology or planning an interview or whatever. But the soft skills that I've found personally are more useful than maybe the other skills, because you need them in an interview with a user. You need them, as we mentioned before, just dealing with colleagues and dealing with having to to convince people to listen to your research and to use it and things like that, you'll find that you'll need those skills probably more than the technical skills. So, and then the technical skills, like, well, since I've got a job, I've probably in the last 6 months like leveled up like tons just doing it every day than I did in the 3-4 years I did it kind of here and there, freelancing, doing like non-profit stuff, and it was more kind of ad hoc work. Once I actually got my job, then like all of those skills will come on the role, on the job.
Exactly.
So don't worry too much if you
you
feel
learn what you do.
Exactly.
I think that's a good one as well. Like, just, I don't know, like, rest assured that you will learn while doing. You don't need to learn everything before you start.
No one's the fully polished UX researcher on their first job, especially their first job. But all of that will come. And also, like, it's like anything in life, but no UX researcher is the same. Like, we all bring different things to the table. We'll all have different strengths as well. We'll all have things that we're better at, and maybe your soft skills is your strength, is the thing that stands you out from other UX researchers. Maybe your technical skills are not like up there at the moment, but if your soft skills are your forte, then go with that, work with that in the interviews and in your case studies, show that, and that might stand you out from the crowd. So cool.
Absolutely.
So, lots of interesting stuff today. So thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thanks to you.
No problem. And so I'm sure you'll all be able to search now for Candela Fonte on LinkedIn. She also has a lot of good experience and things she shares as well. So so thank you again, and maybe we'll get you back on the podcast in the future.
We love that. Thanks so much.
Thank you.